guys, good morning. It is Steph and I am here going to dig up my dahlias today. It's going to be a beautiful 70-degree day here, so it's the perfect time to get these spent dahlias up and out of the ground. A couple things that I am using for supplies today. I've got some crates here. I've got 3 of them. I've got a ton more in our storage shed. They're just crates that I got at an estate sale, so I'm going to dig these up, put them in here, and then I'll be able to wash them off really well. I've got a pitchfork. Important to use a pitchfork when digging up the dahlias so I don't stab an actual tuber and then ruin it. The pitchfork has some space in it, so it's less likely to hit those tubers than a shovel. And I've also got my gloves because this can be a dirty job. So we're gonna jump right in. My goal is to get through these 2 beds, but I might also do the front garden beds if we have time. So let's jump right in. And I forgot to mention the most important supply. I have label tags, plastic label tags for my dahlias. I will go through and label them with a garden marker, if I can find it. Right here, a garden marker won't fade. These I both got on Amazon. I'm gonna use this technique this year instead of labeling each individual tuber right now. I'm just gonna tag the whole clump. That way I know which tuber is which, and when the spring comes, I can certainly plant them according to how I want them to look in the bed, if I want a certain order, etc. So don't forget your labels and your garden marker. These 2 on the end over here are breakout, so we're gonna start here. I've got my label ready. We're gonna dig them up, tag them, and rock and roll. Right after lifting the dahlia out of the soil, I try to get as much soil off of the tubers as I can before I take them to be washed, just to help with the process. So trying to get all that dirt that's packed in there out. I got the first 2 dug out, and I'm finding they're coming out really easily in these raised beds. Most all of my dahlias are in these raised beds. And so I'm gonna go through and just cut the tops off of all of these and then see if I can gently pull up without disturbing any of those tubers. Let's look at the 2 that just came out. These lifted out really easily, really nicely, which is great. So if it's gonna be like this the whole time, it'll just be easier to cut those stalks off right in here before I even take them out of the ground, and then gently lift, and voila. That's coming out pretty nicely. I did tear one off there, so that would be a reason not to. But I've still got some good tubers on there. So we'll play with it. We'll play with it. This is broken. That's called a broken neck. So that's not going to be any good. But we'll see here. We'll see. I think we still... Well, there's a good one. We still may need to come in. Yeah, these all broke off. So I think we still come in with a pitchfork for the most part. I'm also gonna come in and cut all the bottoms of these off because these don't need to be on. And it'll just be a little easier to work with when I'm cleaning them and such. That's an actual tuber. I'm not gonna cut that. That's a lot cleaner than this. That's a nice solid clump right there. That worked better. No tubers were pierced or cut off. Just get as much dirt as I can off before I wash them, and the rest of that dirt should come off after they're washed.
At this point, I get into the groove of doing the same routine over and over, chopping the dahlia about 4 to 5 inches from the base, separating the stick that holds the dahlia up, putting that in a pile, getting ready to store it, lifting up the dahlia out of the ground with the pitchfork, holding on by that base that I've cut to be a little handle, and then trimming all the roots that are long off of the dahlia so it'll be easier to clean and work with when I get to the next step. The process could be arduous, but I'm finding that it's much easier in these raised beds than in my native clay soil that is like a rock. And I do some later that come out of my ground, and it's a much different ball game. So I'm happy I chose to do these in raised beds in my zone in 5B because of my heavy clay soil. Much easier in the raised beds. And now we move on to the next step.
Okay, so those beds are all taken care of. We're all dug up here. One thing to note is that dahlia tubers can be a bunch of different sizes. This is Sierra Glow, one of my favorites, and it's got huge, huge tubers on it. Let me give you an up-close look. I mean, those are some honkin' tubers. And then this is Bella Bermira, which is also a huge dahlia, but much smaller tubers. On the tinier side. Interesting how they can be the same size when they're in a bloom and then quite different tuber-wise, huh? Point being, it doesn't matter the size of the tuber. Dahlias will grow from all sorts of tubers as long as they have an eye, an intact neck, and a body on the tuber. And I'll get more into that when I do my dividing video of when I divide these up into individual tubers. But for today, I just want to talk about digging. For the most part, most of these stayed intact. I did have a couple casualty, a couple pierced bodies, a couple broken necks on the tuber, and those won't grow, so I just toss those aside. But otherwise, we've got a lot to work with here, which is good. I'm going to do my front garden beds later, but I want to finish these up, so that means that we need to spray them down with water, get as much dirt off of them as we can. So that is next. I personally don't have a nozzle on my hose. I've lost it. Go figure. But I'm just going to use a regular stream and clean them. It is nice if you have the direct, I forget what that setting is on the sprinkler, but a nice hard flow. That's really nice to get some of that dirt that's in between those tubers out. So FYI, here we go. This is a dirty, dirty job, so probably best not to do it on your patio like I'm doing. I'm going to do this next bin over here with the water and the grass because this rug is just soaked. Good work, good work. Lessons learned. It's supposed to be a nice day, so I'm gonna set these out to dry on this table here for a few hours. That should be long enough, maybe 4, and just set them across the table here to dry. Here we are, all laid out here. I'll keep them there probably just the majority of the day to make sure they're dried off and cool. And next will come the job of dividing them and storing them. But let's take a look at everything else that is left over from digging them up. So here we have all the remnants of the dahlias from this year. That will go in the compost pile. These are all the stakes I used to stake them. Those will go into the shed. You can definitely compost these, so go ahead and do that. In these 2 beds that we just dug up, tulips will be next. So get excited because they're coming. I'd rather plant bulbs all day than dig up dahlias. I'm usually pretty excited most days about what's happening in the garden, but digging dahlias just is not my jam, although necessary. necessary to store them and get beautiful blooms the following year. Technically, I think if you're in a zone 8 or above, you can let them overwinter and the dahlias will come back up next year. Wowza, do I wish that was me, but it's not, and that's okay. So if you're in a zone 8 or higher, you can let those babies sleep for the winter. I know a lot of people will mulch them over, make sure they're in nice and tight for the winter, and then they get dahlias the following year. Wowza. For us in those colder climates, that would be nice, huh? But we just got to put a little more work in, and that's okay. So this is the last bed that I need to dig up dahlia-wise, and you can see that there's actually blooms still on it. I think we're on November 7th today. Can you believe that? I could cut that and use that in a bouquet. This guy too. We've been having really great weather, so that's wonderful. I'm gonna cut these and put them inside, and then I'll dig these up later this afternoon. Now sites like this makes me excited. Anemone's still coming up in my raised beds. One more piece of departing advice. Make sure you have nice sharp shears that you're using to cut. Needle nose is really good. These are the ones I could find today, and they're blunt, they're not sharp, and it takes a lot longer to get all those little roots off, and it's more tedious, and I did not enjoy it. So make sure you have nice sharp shears. You'll thank me for it. Totally worth it. Axel, you tired? You did a lot of work there digging those dahlias, huh? So we're gonna take a break for lunch. That is it for digging up the dahlias. I'll finish the ones in the front this afternoon so they're all done. Please comment below and let me know how digging dahlias is going for you this year. If you do anything different in your zone, please let me know. I love to hear. And we'll see you in the next one. Be sure to like this video if it was helpful, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to follow along with all things garden. See you in the next one. Bye!